Breaking. This just lit the internet on fire. Because when Katt Williams starts telling the truth about the entertainment industry, people listen. And this time, the name being pulled into the conversation is Teyana Taylor. The timeline is spiraling right now over one explosive question: is Teyana Taylor being blacklisted? Nobody saw this coming. For years, fans have quietly questioned why someone with her level of talent, singing, directing, choreography, fashion influence, doesn't always receive the mainstream push others get. Then Katt, known for calling out Hollywood politics, gatekeeping, and behind-the-scenes power plays, allegedly hinted that certain artists aren't allowed to win unless they play the game. And suddenly, fans connected dots. Clips resurfaced. Old interviews were re-examined. Missed award nominations. Scrapped projects. Industry silence moments. And the narrative exploded. Is this coincidence? Is this industry politics? Or is this another example of how Hollywood allegedly controls who rises and who stalls? But here's the twist. There is no confirmed public evidence of an official blacklist. And that's what makes this even more dangerous. Because when speculation meets a voice like Katt Williams, a comedian who's built a reputation on exposing industry patterns, the culture starts listening differently. So what did he actually say? Was Teyana directly named? Or are fans filling in the blanks? And is this about punishment? Or power? Stay with me. Because once we break down the timeline, the context, and the industry whispers surrounding this, you'll understand why this conversation is bigger than one artist. It's about how Hollywood works. And who really controls the spotlight. To understand why this even became a conversation, we have to separate three things: what Katt Williams actually said, what fans heard, and why Teyana Taylor's name started trending in the middle of it. Because here's the truth. There was no official press conference. No direct accusation. No documented industry memo that said blacklist Teyana Taylor. This started with a vibe. And vibes on the internet spread like wildfire. It all goes back to Katt Williams' now viral pattern of calling out Hollywood power structures. Over the past few years, especially during long-form interviews and podcast appearances, Katt has repeatedly spoken about gatekeeping in entertainment. He's claimed there are systems in place that decide who gets opportunities, who gets visibility, and who quietly fades from mainstream attention. When he talks about the machine, he's describing an ecosystem: executives, studios, labels, sponsors, all working within power structures that can elevate or stall a career. Now here's where fans started connecting dots. Teyana Taylor's career has always felt unconventional. From early industry buzz as a teenager signed to a major label, to her breakout cultural moment in Kanye West's Fade video, she's consistently delivered talent. Vocals, dance, choreography, creative direction, fashion influence. But the mainstream push has always seemed inconsistent. Her album releases were sometimes delayed. She publicly expressed frustration with label support in past interviews. She even announced stepping away from music at one point, citing exhaustion and feeling underappreciated by the industry. Those are documented statements. But frustration with a label is not proof of blacklisting. Still, when an artist openly says they feel unsupported, fans remember that. Now fast forward to Katt speaking broadly about how real talent threatens systems, and how the industry doesn't reward authenticity unless it can control it. He didn't name Teyana directly in confirmed clips. But the language resonated with people who already believed she hadn't been given her proper shine. And once fans start seeing patterns, they start building narratives. Then social media did what it always does. Clips were edited. Statements were stitched. Old interviews resurfaced. People began pointing out, why hasn't she won more major awards? Why aren't her directing credits pushed harder? Why does she feel more celebrated by fans than by institutions? But here's the critical part. Award snubs are common in the music industry. Creative pivots happen. Artists evolve. And sometimes stepping back from traditional promotion is intentional, not imposed. Teyana herself has shifted focus heavily into directing and creative direction in recent years. She's worked behind the scenes on major visual projects and stepped into executive creative roles. That doesn't look like someone shut out of the industry. It looks like someone expanding within it. But perception doesn't always follow nuance. When fans see a multi-talented artist not dominating Billboard charts or award shows, they look for reasons. And when a loud voice like Katt Williams talks about hidden power dynamics, it feels like confirmation. Even if it isn't. And here's the deeper layer. Hollywood absolutely has gatekeeping dynamics. Labels choose marketing budgets. Studios decide casting. Executives greenlight projects. That's not conspiracy, that's structure. But structure doesn't automatically equal blacklist. A blacklist implies coordinated exclusion. There is no public evidence of that in Teyana's case. What we do have is public frustration with label experiences in the past, career transitions into directing and creative leadership, periods of less mainstream music promotion, a fanbase that believes her talent outweighs her institutional recognition. That combination created fertile ground for speculation. And once speculation starts, it doesn't need confirmation to grow. Another factor that intensified this conversation: timing. Teyana has recently been in headlines for personal and professional transitions, divorce proceedings, creative expansion, acting roles. When someone is already trending, new narratives attach easily. Add Katt's reputation for exposing industry patterns, and suddenly people aren't just asking if Hollywood gatekeeps. They're asking who it's gatekeeping right now. And Teyana's name ended up in that sentence. But here's where things need clarity. There is no confirmed public statement from Katt Williams directly accusing the industry of blacklisting Teyana Taylor. There is no documented industry action removing her from projects. There is no verified evidence of coordinated career suppression. What exists is perception, fueled by her own past industry frustrations, Katt's commentary about gatekeeping, fans wanting to protect an artist they believe deserves more, and that emotional investment makes the narrative powerful. Because when fans feel someone is underappreciated, they don't just defend them. They rise. Now here's the real question that started all of this. Is Teyana being blocked? Or is she choosing creative independence over traditional industry structures? Those are very different realities. Because if an artist decides to pivot away from radio-driven music into directing, producing, and creative consulting, mainstream visibility might change. Not because they are blacklisted, but because they are no longer playing the same game. And sometimes, stepping off the main stage looks like being pushed, even when it's voluntary. That's the nuance the internet doesn't always pause to consider. Still, once Katt's words hit timelines and Teyana's name started trending alongside phrases like industry politics and gatekeeping, the debate became bigger than evidence. It became cultural. And when cultural debates mix with celebrity names, they don't cool down easily. They escalate. Which brings us to what happened next. Because once this theory took off, the internet didn't just speculate. It went digging. The internet meltdown. 1,600 words, and this is where everything went from interesting conversation to full-blown digital wildfire. Because once Katt Williams' industry commentary started circulating alongside the name Teyana Taylor, the internet did what it does best: it connected dots. Even if those dots weren't officially connected. Within hours, TikTok clips were everywhere. Slow zooms on Katt saying phrases like, "They control who wins." Edits of Teyana's past interviews where she mentioned feeling unsupported. Montages of award show moments where fans believed she was snubbed. The algorithm smelled blood. Hashtags like #ProtectTeyana and #IndustryPolitics started gaining traction. Threads popped up breaking down her entire career timeline like it was a true crime case file. People weren't just speculating. They were building evidence boards. Fans pointed to her critically praised projects that didn't dominate award cycles. They referenced the period where she publicly expressed frustration with her label and even announced stepping away from music, saying she felt underappreciated and creatively drained. They questioned why someone with her choreography, directing talent, and fashion influence isn't consistently positioned as a mainstream powerhouse. And here's where it escalated. Old interviews resurfaced where Teyana discussed creative differences and feeling like her vision wasn't always fully backed by the machine. Again, that's documented frustration. But frustration with industry infrastructure doesn't equal coordinated blacklisting. Still, nuance gets lost when emotion enters the chat. And emotion was everywhere. Influencers jumped in. Some argued that artists who speak openly about label politics often experience subtle industry pushback. Others pushed back hard, saying this narrative undermines Teyana's current success as a director and creative executive. Because let's not ignore something important. While fans debated blacklisting, Teyana has been actively working, directing major visuals, stepping into acting roles, expanding her creative portfolio behind the scenes. That doesn't resemble someone exiled. But here's why the meltdown kept growing. Visibility bias. When an artist shifts from front-facing music promotion to behind-the-scenes creative direction, the public perceives a drop-off, even if the career is expanding. Out of sight feels like out of power. And when Katt's commentary about gatekeepers deciding who shines hit that same timeline, it felt like confirmation bias at work. Suddenly, every missed award became evidence. Every delayed album release became proof. Every quiet season became silencing. But here's the truth bomb nobody wanted to slow down and examine. There is no confirmed public documentation of Teyana being blacklisted. No studio statements. No label memos. No coordinated industry ban. What exists is perception shaped by her own past transparency about label struggles, Katt's broad commentary about Hollywood power structures, fans who feel her talent hasn't been institutionally rewarded, and perception spreads faster than facts. Now here's where the chaos intensified. A viral thread claimed that artists who refuse to conform to industry expectations often get less push. But what are those expectations? Radio-friendly singles, social media algorithms, award show campaigning, marketing budgets. Those aren't conspiracies, they are mechanics. But online discourse blurred the line between structure and suppression. Then came the YouTube breakdowns. Reaction channels started asking, why hasn't Teyana received more mainstream accolades? Is independence being mistaken for isolation? Is speaking up about label frustrations career suicide? The tone shifted from accusation to investigation. And that's when it became cultural. Because the conversation stopped being just about Teyana. It became about systemic dynamics. About how talent doesn't always equal institutional recognition. About how creative control sometimes comes at the cost of mass promotion. and about how artists who pivot away from traditional label systems may appear less visible, even when they're strategically building elsewhere. But here's the uncomfortable layer. When fans believe someone is being treated unfairly, they don't wait for evidence. They build narratives to protect them. And in that protective instinct, nuance collapses. Katt Williams never released a confirmed statement saying Teyana Taylor is blacklisted. He spoke broadly about systems. The internet filled in the blanks. And once the blanks were filled, the story wrote itself. Now let's talk about why this resonated so hard. Teyana has always felt like an artist's artist. Creative. Visionary. Unfiltered. She doesn't always fit into a neat commercial box. That uniqueness makes fans feel she deserves more spotlight. So when mainstream metrics don't reflect that belief, people search for explanations. And Blacklist is a powerful explanation. It's dramatic. It's emotional. It feels like justice for perceived imbalance. But it's also serious. Because accusing an industry of blacklisting someone implies coordinated exclusion. And that's not a small claim. Still, the meltdown kept escalating. Some fans argued that stepping back from music, after publicly criticizing label support, might have quietly shifted industry relationships. Others countered that she chose autonomy, and autonomy often means less reliance on mainstream machines. Then came the final layer that made this trend explosive. People began revisiting her recent life transitions, including high-profile personal headlines, and questioning whether industry focus shifted accordingly. Was she deprioritized? Or simply evolving? The internet didn't wait for answers. It decided this was a pattern. And once a narrative becomes a pattern in the public mind, it sticks. Even without proof. That's how meltdowns happen. Not from confirmed facts, but from emotional alignment. Katt's anti-gatekeeper stance. Teyana's past frustrations. Fans' protective instincts. Timing. Algorithm amplification. All colliding at once. And suddenly, what started as broad commentary about Hollywood systems turned into a trending claim about one artist's career. But here's the cliffhanger that keeps this story alive. Neither Katt nor Teyana has directly addressed this specific speculation. No clarification. No denial. No confirmation. Just silence. And silence, in moments like this, is interpreted differently by everyone watching. Some see it as dignity. Some see it as validation. Some see it as strategy. But until someone speaks clearly, the meltdown continues in cycles. Because once the internet believes it's uncovered a hidden pattern, it doesn't let go easily. And that brings us to the bigger question that's now hanging in the air. Is this about suppression? Or simply evolution? Because the answer to that changes everything. Now we have to zoom out. Because once the noise settles, once the hashtags cool off, once the TikTok edits slow down, we're left with something much bigger than a trending topic. Is Teyana Taylor actually being blacklisted? Or is she evolving in a way that doesn't fit the mainstream machine anymore? That's the real question. And it's uncomfortable, because it challenges both sides of the argument. Let's start with the harsh reality of the entertainment industry. Gatekeeping absolutely exists. Marketing budgets determine visibility. Radio relationships determine spins. Streaming playlists determine chart positions. Award campaigns determine nominations. That's not conspiracy, that's structure. And when Katt Williams talks about the machine, he's referencing that structure. The ecosystem that decides who gets amplified. But here's the nuance the internet keeps skipping over. Being underpromoted is not the same thing as being blacklisted. A blacklist implies coordinated exclusion. It implies calls being made, doors being closed, names being removed from consideration. There is no public evidence of that happening to Teyana. What we do have is documented tension between her and label systems in the past. She openly expressed frustration about album rollouts and creative support. She publicly announced stepping away from music at one point because she felt undervalued. That's real. But here's the shift people aren't talking about enough. Since stepping back from traditional music promotion, Teyana hasn't disappeared. She's redirected. Directing high-profile visuals. Stepping into acting roles. Expanding into creative direction and production. That doesn't look like exile. It looks like pivot. And sometimes pivoting away from one spotlight makes it look like someone dimmed your light, when in reality, you moved stages. But here's where the emotional tension lives. Fans measure success through visibility. Charts. Awards. Headlines. So when an artist as multi-talented as Teyana isn't dominating Billboard or sweeping award shows, fans assume something is wrong. They don't always consider that she might not be prioritizing those arenas the way she once did. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: the mainstream machine rewards conformity and consistency. Radio-friendly singles. Aggressive marketing campaigns. Award show appearances. Press runs. If an artist chooses creative autonomy over chasing those lanes, visibility may shift. Not because they are banned, but because they are not feeding the same system. Now let's flip it. What if there are subtle industry politics at play? What if speaking openly about label frustrations quietly cools certain relationships? Hollywood runs on relationships. If you publicly critique a system, that system may not prioritize you in return. That's not a blacklist. That's business tension. And tension doesn't always show up in dramatic ways. It can show up as fewer playlist placements, less marketing push, delayed projects, less award campaigning. But again, there is no confirmed evidence of that happening here. Just patterns fans interpret through emotional loyalty. And here's the deeper psychological layer. When someone like Katt speaks about gatekeeping, audiences feel validated. Because it confirms something many creatives already suspect: that talent alone doesn't guarantee promotion. So when his commentary floats near Teyana's name, it feels like confirmation. Even if he never directly accused anyone of targeting her. Now ask yourself something critical. If Teyana were truly blacklisted, would she still be directing major projects? Would she still be appearing in films and fashion campaigns? Would she still have industry access? A blacklist is total. What we're seeing isn't total exclusion. It's selective visibility. And selective visibility can mean many things: strategic rebranding, career transition, industry recalibration, personal choice. But here's the part that keeps this debate alive. Teyana has always felt bigger than the platforms that showcase her. She's multidimensional. And when someone with that level of talent isn't constantly center stage, fans interpret it as suppression. Because in their minds, she should be everywhere. But the industry doesn't always operate on should. It operates on strategy, relationships, and timing. So the bigger question becomes this: is she being blocked? Or is she choosing lanes that don't prioritize mass market dominance? Because those are two completely different realities. And without documented proof of coordinated exclusion, we have to sit in the gray area. And the gray area isn't as dramatic. It's less satisfying. But it's more honest. Now here's the cliffhanger that makes this even more intense. If Teyana decides to address this directly, even subtly, the narrative could shift overnight. If she says she felt sidelined, the speculation strengthens. If she says she chose autonomy and independence, the blacklist narrative weakens. If Katt clarifies whether he meant her specifically when discussing gatekeeping, that changes everything. Until then, we're operating on interpretation, on timing, on perception. And perception is powerful. Because once fans believe someone is being treated unfairly, that belief becomes part of the artist's story, even without documentation. So maybe the bigger question isn't, is she blacklisted? Maybe it's this: what does success look like when you stop playing by the industry's loudest rules? Because if Teyana is building quietly behind the scenes, if she's choosing creative control over chart dominance, if she's expanding beyond music into executive spaces, then maybe this isn't suppression. Maybe it's evolution. But evolution doesn't trend as easily as scandal. And that's why this debate isn't cooling down. It's deepening. Because the culture wants clarity. And until clarity arrives, the question lingers. Blocked or building? That answer will change how this entire narrative is remembered. Here's the most balanced take. There is no public evidence confirming that Teyana Taylor is officially blacklisted. There is documented history of her expressing dissatisfaction with label support. There are industry patterns where artists who don't align with certain systems struggle for promotion. And there is a growing movement of artists choosing autonomy over mainstream machine backing. So when Katt Williams talks about gatekeeping, it resonates, especially in cases where fans feel talent isn't rewarded proportionally. But resonance isn't proof. It's perception. And perception spreads faster than facts. If Teyana addresses this directly, even subtly, the conversation could explode again. If Katt clarifies whether he meant her specifically, that could shift everything. Until then, this remains an open-ended debate. Is she being blocked? Or is she building quietly on her own terms? One thing is certain. The culture is watching. And the second a receipt drops, real or rumored, this conversation will go nuclear. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Teyana Taylor is being blacklisted? Or do you think she simply stepped away from a system that no longer served her? Do you trust Katt Williams' takes on Hollywood politics? Or do you think the internet sometimes connects dots that aren't meant to be connected? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this isn't just about one artist. It's about power, visibility, and who controls the spotlight. Like the video if you want deeper breakdowns like this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update. Because if anyone involved decides to speak, this entire narrative could flip overnight.